Welcome to Inventory Management. This is Mark Spielis. And in this podcast, we're going to explore the implications of inventory and inventory management. When we refer to inventory is a reflection of an investment in our inventory, and it requires capital. So when we refer to inventory, this is an allocation of financial resources that firms are much more focused on today than at any other time in history. So in this podcast, we're going to explore inventory management. And when we look at inventory management, we can refer back to our SCORE model. In our SCORE model, we define these 5 specific areas of supply chain operations, from planning, sourcing, making a product, delivering it, returning it. So when we refer to inventory and inventory management, it's this balancing of the planning or demand planning or demand forecasting with our supply. So we're balancing out what we expect our demand to be with the supply or our inventory. Okay. So our learning objectives for this podcast are linking demand forecasting with inventory. I think I just did that. Inventory impacts on business. Let's look at a few examples of inventory impacts in business. What is an opportunity cost of carrying too much inventory? We know that not carrying enough, we are short on sales, and we may lose revenue as a result of that, but there's an opportunity cost of carrying too much inventory. Be able to define and list 3 good inventory or normal inventory types. Understand the relationship between fuel costs, which are going up, and inventory. And then we'll introduce the bullwhip effect. I have more on a YouTube video. All right, some inventory impacts in business today. So when we look at one impact, it's customer service. So an impact of not having enough inventory may mean a reduction in revenue or sales. We see with all the supply chain disruptions today that many different businesses and firms have not been able to maintain their revenue numbers because of lack of inventory. Not having inventory also results in a lack of production. All right, so inventory is needed for production. We've seen this recently during the pandemic with semiconductor chips. All right, so raw materials, work in process items, they all go into the production process. Supporting activities, sometimes we don't think of the supporting activities being MRO, maintenance, repair, and operating supplies that are needed. So in the airline industry, jets come in to be maintained, and parts and inventory are required to keep up with the jets and the maintenance on those jet engines. So customer service, bringing your car into a dealership for repair, for example, at Ford or Firestone, having those parts available to the dealers and to the repair locations are critical in being able to maintain customer service. In the retail industry, having product available, having the supply chains be able to be viable and be able to replenish customer demand. So these are all examples within the supply chain today. All right, so when we look at inventory itself has a cost, right? The cost of the actual inventory, it's an investment for an organization. Beyond that, we also have the cost of the warehouse itself. So there is a cost of holding the inventory. It could be within a manufacturing facility. It also could be an additional warehouse. We have the damage cost, holding inventory. There's times that there's product or inventory that gets damaged in that process. So holding inventory or holding too much inventory especially can result in damage to that inventory. As you hold inventory, you have to account for that. So either having a system or having resources, people in place to do cycle counting. Some of that's being done by drones today. I think that's pretty fascinating. But beyond all of that, holding inventory or too much inventory has a cost. Too much inventory has an opportunity cost. What that means is if you're holding too much inventory and you're not managing your inventory properly, there's an opportunity cost. You've invested in the inventory when you can and should be investing in other items. That could be people, systems, technology, innovation. So sinking that money into inventory when it's not needed is an opportunity cost for many firms. All right, so when we look at inventory or inventory level, it's a target. It's a target that we're trying to maintain within our organization. So what we're trying to do with that target is balance out the cost of a shortage with the cost of holding excess inventory. In either case, there is a cost. It's all about trying to balance those two costs out. We can evaluate that target from the perspective of a target service level. And that's how well we maintain our demand, our customer demand. So maintaining 98% as an example of the fill rate would be a target service level. So based on our customer demand, we're able to maintain 98% of it. That would be a target service level. Or we can have a target stocking point. So that same 98% fill rate is equal to 75 units as an example. So we can measure our target from a service level perspective or a stocking point perspective. Whenever we're looking at inventory, one key fact about the proper management of that inventory is we need to disaggregate or break down inventory. We can't just look at inventory as one big class. We need to break it down into categories. All right, so we'll do that. Let's take a look at an example of a good inventory, okay, or normal inventory. So these would be inventory types that you'd expect to see in any operation. All right, so the first type of good or normal inventory is our cycle inventory. And this is the normal inventory that's required to meet the needs of our customers in our manufacturing batches. All right, so this is normal inventory. Cycle inventory is all part of batched inventory with no variation, with no major variations associated with it. So this is, if we had no variation and we had our demand and there are no disruptions, that would be considered our cycle inventory. Another type of good inventory is our pipeline inventory. This is the amount of inventory that's moving at any given time. It's flowing through our supply chain. So if inventory is moving, it's considered to be pipeline stock or pipeline inventory, okay? So we've seen over the last 10 years, 15 years, that our supply chains have gotten longer. We're seeing global supply chains. That results in a higher level of pipeline inventory. Next is our safety inventory. Safety inventory is held because of disruptions or potential disruptions. So that can come in the form of a delayed shipment. It can come in the form of a supplier who can't maintain their schedule. So they're supposed to ship 100 units today. They can't, they shipped 50, or they can't ship today and they ship tomorrow. Okay, so you've got to hold additional inventory because of these variations in the supply chain. So we saw a lot of that over the last couple of years with disruptions in our supply chains because of the pandemic. All right, we're witnessing skyrocketing fuel costs as well as high diesel costs. So diesel represents the highest cost within transportation. If you're a carrier, that's one of your highest costs you've got as a carrier. So there is an impact of higher fuel costs and inventory. So as fuel continues to go up, and it has been, the relationship is companies generally are going to carry more inventory. And the reason for that is they'll choose to use a slower mode, which is more efficient. It's a slower mode and it burns less fuel and there's less cost. As a result of that, companies will actually hold on to more inventory, and they're holding more because the modes are taking longer, the transportation modes. As an example, that might be utilizing intermodal or rail versus truck, or truck versus air, or ocean versus air. So those slower modes, you can imagine there's more inventory in the pipe. We've been energy independent and we've been a net exporter of energy. That's changing though. So as that changes and we're moving more towards not producing energy here in the US, expect those diesel prices to continue to go up. All right, so we've moved through the pandemic to this change in consumer behavior where consumers are expecting more e-tailing and online retailing. As a result of that, inventory placement is important. So more inventory is being moved closer to the customer because customers are requiring higher delivery requirements. They're expecting shipments to be delivered within a day or even in some cases less than a day. So that's impacting retailers such as Amazon, where their warehouse locations are now increasing. So as their warehouse locations increase, they get closer to the customer, inventory levels are also increasing as a result of that. So one inventory term that I would like to introduce you to is the bullwhip effect. And what this bullwhip effect represents is when we see a small change in demand downstream, okay? This would be downstream demand would be the consumer. So here's our consumer. And so as we see this small little change here, as we get further into the supply chain, each one of the entities within the supply chain, they carry more inventory. They want to account for making sure they have enough inventory so they don't have a stock out. So this small change up front represents a significant amount of inventory as you get further away from the customer. That is the bullwhip effect. So you can see the YouTube video that I've got on the bullwhip effect. How much inventory to carry, right? We've talked about this. It's a factor of return on investment. We talked about inventory as a target. It is a target. You're balancing out a cost of shortage with a cost of carrying too much inventory. So it's all about breaking down your inventory into categories and focusing on those items that have the highest return on investment. So as you have a variety of different products, you want to keep the ones in stock that generate the highest return on investment. So this is Mark Spielis. If you have questions, reach out to me. Make it a great day.